You keep hearing the same thing every single payday. Work more, earn more. That is the whole equation. So, you pick up the Saturday shift again, third week in a row, 40 extra hours this month. Same hourly rate, same tired legs by Sunday night. Nobody mentions the other rule, the one that does not need your Saturdays at all. It is sitting in your bank app right now, ignored, doing nothing while you sleep. Quietly worth more than the shift you just worked. By 10 in the morning, you're back at your desk, headset around your neck, and your coworker from claims processing spins her monitor around to show you her new lease, a BMW SUV, $549 a month, 36 months, nothing down. I just felt like I deserved it, she says. And you nod, because you know exactly what that sentence costs to say out loud, and exactly what it costs to actually mean. You make $58,000 a year. She makes about the same. You both clock the same hours, drink the same break room coffee, get the same 3% raise letter every January. And yet somehow, this decision, a car, a monthly number, a signature on a dotted line, makes it look like she is ahead of you. For a second in the fluorescent light of the break room, it feels that way. Then you go back to your desk and pull up your bank app. Checking account. Savings, $340. The 401k you started when you were hired 18 months ago, matched at 4% by the company, sitting at $2,100. Nothing else. No IRA, nothing outside of that. You add it up, just under $2,500. That number sits differently than your paycheck does. Your paycheck is a number that passes through you. It shows up, it leaves. It goes to rent and gas and groceries. This number is different. This is what is left after everything else has already taken its share. This is what you actually keep.
You think about the BMW again, except now you are doing different math. The lease is $549 a month for something that will be worth less every single day it is driven. Your 401k contribution is $180 a month, automatic, invisible. And it is the only bill you have that makes you richer instead of poorer for paying it. Nobody spins their monitor around to show you a retirement account balance. Nobody screenshots a Roth IRA for their story. But one of these numbers compounds, and the other one depreciates the second it leaves the lot. That evening, driving your old Honda Civic home, the one with 91,000 miles and a check engine light you have been ignoring since March, you do not feel behind anymore. You feel like you finally know what you are being graded on. It was never the car in the parking lot. It was never the number that hits your account and leaves again by the 15th. It is the number that stays. Which is exactly the problem, because right now, most of what stays is not growing. It is being eaten alive by something with a due date and an interest rate, and you haven't opened that statement in 3 weeks. The email is still sitting there, unread, subject line going gray with age. You finally open it on your couch that Sunday night, laptop balanced on your knees, a bowl of reheated pasta going cold beside you. Credit card balance, $6,380. Interest rate, 23.99%. Minimum payment, $159. You know this number. You built it slowly, the way most people do. A security deposit you didn't have cash for, a medical bill in February, a flight home for a family wedding that you put on the card because the alternative was not going. None of it felt reckless in the moment. It felt like living. Your neighbor, Devin, mentioned once that he just makes the minimum and doesn't think about it. "It's fine," he said, leaning against the mailboxes. "It's like $150 a month. That's nothing." You nodded. Then tonight on the couch, you actually do the math he never did. At 23.99%, paying only the minimum, that $6,380 balance takes you past 9 years to clear. You will pay more than $6,900 in interest alone, more than the debt itself, just for the privilege of not thinking about it sooner. The number doesn't feel abstract anymore. It feels like a second rent payment you agreed to without reading the lease. Devon's "it's nothing" is actually a 9-year sentence with $6,900 in fees attached. You open a second tab, not to transfer the balance. You don't have the credit for a 0% card, not yet, but to build a real number instead of an imagined one.
$6,380 divided by 18 months. $354 a month. That is not comfortable. That is canceling subscriptions you forgot you had. That is bringing lunch to work instead of ordering it. That is saying no to things you already feel guilty about declining. But 18 months at that pace costs you around $1,350 in interest instead of $6,900. You write the number down on a piece of paper and stick it to your laptop. Not as motivation, just as a fact. You do not want to lose again the way you lost 3 weeks of not opening this email. There is a version of tonight where you close the laptop, finish the cold pasta, and let the minimum payment keep doing what it has been doing. Nobody would know, the card would keep working at checkout, the number would just keep growing in a place you trained yourself not to look. Instead, you set up the auto pay for $354 starting Friday. Watch the confirmation screen load and feel something closer to dread than relief, because $354 a month is real money leaving a paycheck that was already tight before you started tracking any of this. 3 weeks into the new auto pay, your car answers a question you did not ask. The check engine light stops blinking and just stays on, solid. 2 days later, it won't start in the parking lot outside the office at 5:47 in the afternoon, the lot already half empty, the sky going flat gray-orange the way it does in late October. The tow truck driver drops the Civic at a shop nearby. The diagnosis comes back the next morning. Alternator, plus a serpentine belt that was already living on borrowed time. $612 parts and labor due before they will release the car. You have $340 in savings, the same $340 from 3 weeks ago, because every spare dollar since then has gone toward the credit card, and you haven't added a single cent to savings. Sitting in the shop waiting room, you do the math you should have done a month ago. 612 minus 340 is $272 you do not have. The nearest version of that money is the credit card, the same card you just spent 3 weeks trying to shrink. This is the moment it stops being abstract. All that talk about interest rates and compounding was true, but it was also theoretical, a number on a screen you could close. This is a car that won't start and a shop that wants cash before 5. This is the difference between an inconvenience and an emergency. And the only thing standing between those two words is whether the money already exists somewhere with your name on it. You put $272 on the card. It's the only option in the room. And watching that swipe go through, you understand something you'll never forget. Not from an article, not from anything anyone told you, but from the actual feeling in your chest.
The 6 months of expenses everyone talks about is not a savings goal. It is a wall. It is the thing that was supposed to be standing between you and this exact swipe, and it was not built yet. Your coworker, Bianca, who sits 2 desks down, mentioned once that she keeps 4 months of expenses in a high-yield savings account. Untouched. Boring on purpose, she called it. You had nodded politely at the time, filed it under things responsible people do. Now, walking out of the shop with a fixed alternator and a slightly heavier balance on a card you just started paying down, it does not sound boring anymore. It sounds like the difference between a bad Tuesday and a bad year. Your monthly expenses, rent, insurance, groceries, gas, the minimums you cannot avoid, lands around $2,100. 6 months of that is $12,600, a number so far from your current $340 that it should feel impossible, and for a second it does. But you are not building it this week. You are building the first $100 of it this Friday. The same way the auto pay for the card became real by just picking a number and setting the date. You start a separate account that same night, transfer $50 into it, money you technically do not have room for, but move anyway. It is not the wall yet. It is the first brick. Monday morning, your manager pulls you into the small conference room and tells you almost apologetically that this year's raise is 3%. Same number as last year, same number as the year before. Your salary goes from $58,000 to $59,740. After taxes, that's about $40 extra a month, less than what you just started sending to the alternator fund. You sit at your desk staring at your monitors, and something Bianca said weeks ago comes back to you. She mentioned almost in passing that she picked up a freelance gig doing claims documentation for a small firm remotely, a few hours a week, using the exact same software skills she uses at the office all day. It is not extra work, she said. It is the same work, just not capped by what they decide I am worth. That distinction sits with you longer than the raise did. Your salary has a ceiling built into it, decided somewhere above your manager in a budget meeting you'll never sit in. But the actual skill you have, reading a file fast, writing it up cleanly, catching the details that get missed, that skill does not have anyone's ceiling on it. It only has whatever ceiling you put on it yourself. That night, you open your laptop not to check your balance, but to look for freelance platforms. You put together a profile in an hour, list the software systems you know cold, and forget about it for 4 days. Until a message comes through from a small independent firm. 15 files, $22 an hour, remote, evenings only. It is not a lot. 15 files at $22 an hour comes out to a few $100s over 2 weeks, done in the 90 minutes after dinner you used to spend scrolling. But it is money with no ceiling attached to it, no manager, no 3%, and it changes something you did not expect.
You notice doing the freelance files how much faster you are than you are at your actual desk job, because nobody is watching the clock. Because the only thing that matters is the file getting done well. By the end of the month, between the small raise and the freelance work, you have added about $340 to what used to just be a salary. And for the first time, that second number came from something your employer never touched. It came from a skill you already had, aimed somewhere your job title could not reach. 6 weeks later, the freelance firm sends a different kind of message. Not more files. A full role, a small startup, 4 people, no office, building software to automate the exact claims work you have been doing by hand for 2 years. The founder offers you $52,000, less than you make now, plus 0.75% equity, vesting over 4 years. You bring the offer to Bianca at lunch, slide your phone across the table. That is a pay cut, she says, which is the same thing you already know, the same thing keeping you up since Tuesday. The founder once mentioned that her old boss left a stable job for something almost exactly like this, and that company sold. Her old boss closed out with just under $4 million. You do not know if this startup becomes that. Nobody does. That is the entire point. Here's the part nobody explains clearly. An asymmetric bet is not a guess dressed up as confidence. It's a trade where you can name your downside in advance. The downside here is $7,740 a year in lost salary, the gap between what you make now and what they are offering. For 4 years, if it never vests into anything, that is a number you can survive. It's not a lease on a car that depreciates. It's not an alternator emergency. It's a bruise, not a break. The upside has no ceiling because equity doesn't work the way a paycheck does. Your 3% raise from your manager was capped the moment it was announced. 0.75% of a company is not capped by anything except how big the company gets. And if it gets anywhere near what the founder's old company did, 0.75% of $4 million is money that changes which decade you retire in. You do the math you have never done before.
5 times your annual expenses invested is the number where compound growth alone can carry you the rest of the way without another dollar from you. At $2,100 in expenses, that number is $126,000. You are nowhere near it, but for the first time, you can see the shape of a path where equity, not another 3% raise, is what closes that gap in years instead of decades. You type the acceptance email at 11:40 at night, read it twice, and hit send before you can talk yourself back into safety. Not because you're certain, because you finally understand that certainty was never actually available to you, not in the safe job either. Your manager's ceiling was never guaranteed to be there in 10 years. It just felt like it was, because nothing had tested it yet. 5 months into the new role, you're in the passenger seat, driving back from a client meeting when the founder's phone lights up on the dashboard. Her father. She lets it go to voicemail, then exhales in a way that tells you more than the call would have. He's 70 in March, she says. Not really to you. I still haven't asked him where the will is. You don't say anything at first because you're thinking about your own father. 68, still working, still the guy who changes his own oil and refuses to talk about money with anyone. You realize somewhere on that drive with the fields going by that you don't know where his will is either. You don't know if he has one. That night, you open your laptop and instead of the freelance dashboard or the credit card screen, you're looking at something you've never needed to look at before. Serious life insurance quotes. Not because anything happened, because for the first time, something depends on you existing. Your mother, still 5 years from her own retirement, still counting in some quiet way on you not needing her help, and maybe someday being able to offer some back. The number that keeps appearing on every insurance site is 10 to 12 times your income. That puts you somewhere between $600,000 and $720,000 in coverage. A 20-year term policy for a healthy non-smoker runs you about $28 a month, less than the monitor you bought for the freelance work. You sit with that contrast for a second. $28 a month is the price of making sure a bad day does not become a second tragedy for someone who loves you. You open a second tab. A basic will through an online service runs under $200. One afternoon of answering questions about who gets what, who you would trust with decisions if you could not make them yourself. You do not have much yet, no house, none of that, but you have a 401k, a growing investment account, the equity vesting slowly in the background, and a car that is finally running clean. Somebody should know what happens to all of it. The harder conversation is the one the founder almost had on that drive. You call your father that Sunday, not about money exactly, more circling it, the way these conversations always start. He deflects twice. The third time you just ask, where is the paperwork? Is there a will? Who is the contact if something happens? He goes quiet for a second, then tells you it is in the fireproof box in the garage, and something in his voice sounds relieved that you asked before he had to bring it up himself. You hang up and sit at your kitchen table, the city outside your window doing whatever it does on a Sunday night. Nothing about that conversation felt like winning. It felt like maintenance, the unglamorous kind, the kind nobody screenshots. But maintenance is what keeps everything standing after it is built. You still check the account most mornings, but you're not bracing for it anymore. The dread that used to arrive before the app even loaded. Now it's just a habit, the way someone checks the weather before a drive. The Civic still ticks a little on cold mornings. The equity still hasn't vested. Tuesday will still ask something of you that Monday didn't finish paying for. But you're not doing the math to survive it anymore. You're doing it because you finally know what you are protecting. And some nights, walking past the kitchen table where the laptop sits closed, you catch yourself thinking about your father, the fireproof box in the garage, the conversation he seemed relieved you started. And you wonder what it would have cost both of you if you had waited any longer to ask. This story is fictional and created for educational and entertainment purposes only. This is not financial advice.